How the Dice Fell. Flint Daniels and the Nightmare in the Garden of the Stars. Part 1.
All right. So, a couple weeks later, there was sort of a bit of a the Earth's been heavily bombarded and barracks destroyed and all that. So presumably they took some time to fix that all.
But the B cells, they fixed everything.
They put up the planetary armor,
right?
That protected even Australia. We had enough, so even Australia is protected. So Australia is not a devastated wasteland. Well, it kind of is a devastated wasteland. It's not a re-devastated wasteland.
So no double Mad Max.
Yeah, no, yes, no double Mad Maxing. Just regular
like
Max.
the survivors that cobbled together the scraps from the Mad Max cars. Matter Max.
They're basically just running around with wheelbarrows.
Remax. It's Remax. Mad Remax.
Yeah. Anyway, so since the briefing room was in the building that was one of the buildings that was leveled by the attack, I established at the beginning, okay, we're having the briefing, but it's in a portable, and it's just a temporary portable.
Right.
We're going to have this portable for the whole rest of the campaign because that's how it goes.
Yes.
Yes. So the party comes in for the briefing, except Lieutenant Pill isn't there. Mr. Black from Human Resources is there instead. He's shown up previously in a previous adventure I ran when Pill wasn't around. And so he opened. He said, thank you for coming to the briefing. Lieutenant Pill is unavailable for this mission as he has abruptly requested medical leave and is currently traveling to Europe. So before we get to the briefing, I'd like you to give me a report at this point on what you've discovered about Lieutenant Pill, because Mr. Black of Human Resources is clearly, a shadowy figure, who's, etc. So yes, the party realized that this medical leave that Pill has requested is an attempt to fulfill that prescription that Dr. Yoon gave him in the previous adventure that he interpreted as a prescription to go to a brothel, which he further figured that Chumley's ancestral estate had been turned into,
right,
due to various slight misunderstandings of things. So yes, he's run off to Europe and is attempting to visit Chumley's ancestral estates
for whatever medical services require there
to fulfill the prescription. Anyway, so yeah, so basically I wanted to prompt the players to tell me what you have figured out about Pill, and they actually had quite a fair bit figured out. I was impressed with how much they've come up with. I don't know if I should give the summary because I know all the truths and I might slip up. So John, what did they tell?
Of course, I might remember everything that they told, but they talked to, I probably don't, because some of the things I didn't remember, but other people did. But like there was talk about, so pills. I mean, this I'm sure has been mentioned, but like they have this idea that everyone's hiders are destroyers, and the destroyers are aggressors that destroy until someone more powerful than them destroys them. The hiders are the ones who survive because they hide from the aggressors. There's also a new category called fools that describes Earth, which are just really they're the ones that get destroyed because they're neither of them.
Yeah, they're a category not mentioned often because they're a transient category.
There's his people live on like an asteroid that's like loose and is not like associated with any sun or something like that.
Yeah, it's an interstellar planet or asteroid or something like that.
He has many siblings and they have like a queen structure. Someone else remembered the details of this better than I did.
Yeah.
They there was more things than that too.
There was something about how you should do what you're genetically best at or something like that. It's your role in life is to do that.
So clearly they're like, they have that kind of, I don't know if it's exactly a caste system, but it's like a genetic kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know there was more things, but it was interesting because there was things that people mentioned, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. But
Yeah.
um,
Anyway, after all that was put together, I mean, you know, these bits of information will come up in future, presumably, as well. So we got to the main briefing of the adventure that we're about to go on, and Captain Smythe takes back over, and he tells the party, a one-way message torpedo arrived in the solar system a few days ago. According to the transmission it sent, it was from an organization called the Suppression Pact, which claims to be a defensive alliance of civilizations that work to destroy common threats. The message was as follows. Greetings, citizens of Earth. We are the Suppression Pact, a defensive alliance of alien civilizations. We are reaching out to you today in dire need of your assistance. Our alliance is currently engaged in a struggle against an evil alien civilization known as the parasite plants. They have enslaved and destroyed countless planets and systems throughout the galaxy, and we are determined to bring an end to their reign of terror. Your own explorers recently encountered the parasite plants on the planet Glynn and succeeded in defeating them via unorthodox means. We have the parasite plant's homeworld under siege, but we need the help of a special space ranger from Earth to tip the scales in our favor. Based on our intelligence from Glynn, we call this ranger the Nightmare Child. We are aware that Earth has a rich history of producing some of the bravest and most skilled space rangers in the galaxy, and we implore you to send us the Nightmare Child to join the fight. The fate of countless lives hangs in the balance. Please, we beg of you, send us the Nightmare Child to help us defeat the parasite plants and bring safety to the galaxy. In return, we can guarantee that no further Izith attacks will take place against your planet. Sincerely, the Suppression Pact. A set of coordinates. I think the party sort of discussed at that point a little bit, but
so are the parasite plants the baobab trees?
Well, yeah. As Captain Smythe went on,
sounds like it. Yeah.
Set of coordinates was included for a planet they called the Parasite's Nest, as well as IFF codes that will let your ship through the picket they're maintaining at the planet itself. As you can likely guess, we think the parasite plants refer to the baobab trees. Given the nature of how baobab trees appear to operate, we're surprised they have a homeworld per se, so we interpret this as the world belonging to whatever species originated them in the first place. The Nightmare Child is, presumably, Flint Daniels. We've been doing work with the spare B cells that you retrieved for use with the planetary shield, and the boys down in research think it may be possible to, well, that's classified. But basically, Daniel's special talent with these things may be possible to replicate in the near future, so he's expendable now. Or rather, I should say, he's available now. Planetary shields are working against current Izith assaults, but having an alliance with a pack like this would be fantastic backup against any potential future threats. So the mission is to evaluate the Suppression Pact to see if they'd be good allies, help them destroy the source of the Mind Snakes, and ideally come back with allies to assist Earth in future defensive actions. Since the biggest challenge your team faced last time you went up against these Mind Snakes was transportation, we've included a new piece of kit in your ship's hold, free of charge. Nuclear-powered jet skis. They should be capable of transporting you very long distances across whatever oceans or other bodies of waters you might find. Also, for legally completely unrelated reasons, Corporation Incorporated is providing you with radiation-shielded hazmat suits for the mission. Unrelated reasons.
Yeah.
Yes. The party then, there was some discussion and they inquired about, well, you know, if this planet's got mind snakes too. Poor Sabine. Sabine has, she went through PTSD, like the past couple of weeks, she was in therapy getting, you know, getting straightened out from the last time. And now we're facing them again.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and she requested to be able to not go on the mission. And they were like,
it was denied.
Yeah.
But they did ask about like mind snake protection, like, and so Mr. Black spoke up. He's like, ah, yes, indeed. The boys down in research have spent a lot of time working on that too, and they've come up with something clever. He pulls a sturdy steel briefcase out from a drawer under the briefing room table, unlocks it, and opens it to reveal a box of tampons. There's a receipt from Zellers in the box, indicating it was purchased from the cheapest and least reputable commercial outlet imaginable.
Yeah.
So yes, previously the party had, in the previous adventure with Mind Snakes, had speculated about stuffing tampons up their nose to protect against the Mind Snakes. Well, the boys down in research,
Yeah.
they did a lot of work on this, and they've come
Yeah.
up with a solution.
Yeah, so
I like that
we have a
both
whole
of our-
briefcase full of tampons now.
I like that both of the role-playing games that you're playing in have radiation suits in them.
Yeah. So I actually, I've been using Stable Diffusion to make a whole lot of visual aids for this adventure, and there was only 2 that I had for the briefing. One was a picture of Mr. Black, which I've used before, and the other I had Stable Diffusion generate a steel briefcase filled with tampons to show, and I showed it round, and everyone at the table with experience with tampons were like, "Those are huge." And I was like, oh,
I just figured it must be a really small briefcase. It's just an example to give you an idea.
Right, yeah. It's the sample case.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I gave them the briefing, and we're officially going to be doing that now. I've been prepping this adventure for almost 3 years now. So I'm really psyched to actually be doing it.
How long ago was the Baobab adventure?
Well, sorry, what?
The Baobab. I started prepping this before the Baobab adventure. When we went into that and we started finding out about, like, oh, there's these trees and they've got this mind snakes and all that, I was like, oh geez, this fits perfectly.
And yeah, and I mean, of course, the Baobab adventure has a 3-year hiatus in the middle of it. So
right.
Yeah, that was the main delay there. But yes, it was just like, wow, this clicks perfectly into the backstory of the thing I'm working on. And I'll be able to prove it too, because I also am ripping off an old science fiction story.
But tell us, how badly did the party crash?
They actually did quite well. I threw in a custom ship in the attack.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. It was a Baobab seed. The stats for the Baobab seed were very similar to the asteroid, which is an existing serious threat. Except when it impacts the ship, it does less damage, but it spawns an internal threat in the place where it impacts the ship. Mind snakes. And so, but the players shot that thing down with great prejudice. They were like, no mind snakes. So they blew the heck out of the Baobab seed before it reached the ship.
Yeah. The only sad thing is Brian didn't go with his original plan, which was, or what he originally said, which was that the mind snake, you have to give the internal threats how they move, and they just moved like a normal internal threat instead of his original suggestion, which is they always move towards Anpele.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. But no, I didn't want to do something specifically mean like that, especially since they might try and interpret that as meaningful in the context of the adventure.
Right.
It's like, oh, the mind snakes are trying to go towards Anpele. She must be the only one who isn't infected. She must be the leader, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know what they'd come up with. Players are weird.
It actually went pretty well. There was some kind of issue. We had a little bit of issue with the energy in the center, but it ended up working out okay because of extra firing just in case.
There was one spot where John wanted to try and be maximally efficient, use up every cube of energy, then replenish it, then use some more. And the order of operations wound up being use up every cube of energy, then use some more, then replenish it.
Yeah, and because the communication was difficult and different people were pulling from different times, it wasn't clear. And like, I think the key there is you really should never try to go down to 0 on energy for 2 reasons. One, because of asynchronous mistakes, and B, because it just leaves no room for error. Right. So, and error is the name of the game. So,
but in the end,
it worked out because we extra shot the first shot that was supposed to kill the Juggernaut or hit the Juggernaut instead killed the stealth fighter or the power shield fighter. But what ended up happening is because we didn't kill the cryo shield fighter right away, it did damage. And because it did damage, it damaged the shields. And it took the shields down to max of 2 instead of max of 3. And on the last shot that my extra shot against the Juggernaut, I had a BA, and that's all I had. And I was like, whatever, I'll play BA, it's an A, it doesn't matter. And I didn't realize till I flipped it, oh, the B happens first, which means it will fill the shield first and then fire. And if there's no energy to fire, it won't fire. But there was 3 cubes of energy. So because the shields had been damaged down to 2, I had 1 cube of energy left, and we were able to fire the gun, and it killed the Juggernaut. So
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular.
So we killed everything, and the only damage we took was those two damages to the white zone.
Cool.
So
yeah, so the ship actually landed.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't write the story with that in mind, but it still works. It still works. Yeah, I wrote a lot of box text for this adventure because ChatGPT is awesome. I won't read it all verbatim in this because there was a lot of florid descriptions of stuff. The ship came out of warp over the planet.
yeah, I did get a sense that the text had been written for a crash, and you'd hastily, like, you're like, you come in at a burning, flaming, perfect landing, and then as the huge the huge perfect landing happens, you
Yep. But anyway,
You
So
didn't
they-
scramble to get ChatGPT to rewrite this change of.
no,
yeah, that's what it's for. Just like, you write out one version and you're like, okay, so pretend this happened except they didn't crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have done that, but it didn't occur to me to preemptively account for that possibility.
Oh, I was just thinking that you would just like in the moment just be
Oh,
like,
in the moment. Yeah, no. I used my human smarty brains to do it.
okay.
Yes.
Party brains.
I mean, you gotta roll with weird things. There's a thing a little bit later on that was a bit more of a divergence, which I'll get to in a little
Are
bit.
you saying you're smarter than ChatGPT?
I'm saying that I'm very slightly faster than typing in what we need for ChatGPT. But anyway, so
ChatGPT knows everything. We're recording this, and then like eventually get posted on YouTube, and then ChatGPT will parse it. And when ChatGPT 2 comes out and becomes our Lord and Master, you will regret ever saying that you were smarter than ChatGPT.
I am constantly saying awesome things about how Google is good, Google is wise, how, all the AIs. I'm totally I'm shilling for the AIs. They'll know. So the ship arrives at the planet that is being besieged. I have this art behind me here that was used as thing. I had this great florid description of this huge battle that's going on. The player's ship, they get a transmission from the suppression pact telling them that the fight's not going well. The planet has defenses that are blocking their attempts to use planetary napalm to destroy the parasite plants, as they call them. But there's this one spot on the planet that is poorly shielded, and you can probably land there. Here's the coordinates, and so the players go to land there. At one point, something on the planet shoots like a plasma bolt at the players, but one of the suppression pact ships blocks it with its body and all that. It's very dramatic.
Oh yeah, it's very cinematic.
Oh, it was so cinematic, so well described. Thank you,
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
Spared no expense on those VFX, right?
Indeed, yes. So the ship landed and then automatically deployed the nuclear powered jet skis into the desert that they had landed at. And so the players all get out of the ship. And I assured them that yes, they were given radiation suits along with the jet skis, but until you actually turn the jet skis on, they're not radioactive. So don't worry about that. You can just ignore the jet skis. And ever the optimists, the players did a engineering check to see whether jet skis would work on sand.
I thought they could be like sci-fi future hover jet skis, like, you know.
They're jet skis.
You know,
They do not work on sand. They have the jets. I mean, it's right in the name. It's a jet. It sucks things in and blows it out. If you feed sand through that, it's not going to work.
But the sad thing is that I wasn't able to say jet ski the whole time.
Yeah.
right.
Yes, that's the sad thing. We're very sad that John didn't get to do that the whole time.
And you didn't get to jump a shark.
Well, just you wait. You're getting ahead of yourself. Players have this thing, you know, where when they get it into their head that they're going to use something. And I kind of expected this, and I was just curious, what are they going to do with these jet skis that are in the middle of a desert?
Well, and it's also just like some of it I feel like is just to see what the GM will let us get away with. Because it's like it's obvious that the whole thing was just there to be a Space Alert style joke, right? They give us the solution to Last Adventure's problem. It plops out into the desert, is worthless. We're like, well, maybe we can use their joke to our advantage. Let's see what Brian will let us get away with.
Well, I let them get away with something fun. They spent like a half a day. They landed during the day and it worked into the night, taking apart these jet skis and rebuilding them into a nuclear-powered hovercraft.
That is an amazing picture.
Yes.
Oh my God, where do you even sit? You just stick your hand into one of the holes and hang on?
So the jets are like sucking air from above and blasting it down below?
Yep.
Amazing.
And it's all powered by a bunch of small nuclear reactors, not even just one big nuclear reactor.
Of course it is.
Yep. It's a bunch
and
of
to cobble them together, we had to remove what little shielding there was on them.
Yes. Yep. So as soon as you
Federated Planets, hold my beer.
Yep. Yep. So yes, they built themselves a nuclear-powered hovercraft, and I'm like, okay, the adventure plan did not account for them having a nuclear-powered hovercraft, but let's see what happens.
Yes, and
Yes, it turns out Robin has not only never seen Mad Max Fury Road, which is not surprising, but she's never even heard of this whole Mad Max thing.
okay, so all your like witness me jokes.
Yeah, and like where do we put the Doof Warrior on this thing and all that sort of stuff, and it's going right over her head. So I've sent her a bunch of links of videos, so hopefully she'll have seen a bunch of Mad Max stuff next time.
Yes, you can catch up.
Yeah, but yes, so they hop on the nuclear-powered hovercraft, and well, I mean, you can't just ride off in any random direction. There's a goal here. They're on this planet looking for baobab trees and mine snakes and all that kind of stuff. So they do a bunch of science checks and whatnot.
Yeah, so I was playing the science officer and I drew nothing but blanks. Like it was just like total failure every time.
Yeah.
And like getting blanks when you're skilled in it is like that's like a 10% chance or something.
Yeah.
So it's really unusual, but it happened a lot.
Yeah. So they had more of an ability, more mobility than I was expecting them to have at this point, but they were not getting the direction they needed to go in.
Yeah, I mean, I know Sabine rigged up like an engine with some kind of like satellite thing using an engineering check. She managed to get some sort of ping that there was like something like a baobab signal in some direction.
Yeah, I finally managed to give them a direction. I think it was she rigged up a reflector with some tinfoil. No, that was why you didn't have the shielding. She took the shielding off of the nuclear reactor to use as a parabolic reflector. I remember that now. Yes.
Yeah, and because it came down to like it's not like it doesn't work. It's not balanced for everyone just to try a check. Like I tried it, so that's it. We can't do it. But if you can come up with a new thing, like I'm gonna rig up this this new way of trying it, then you can try it, which is what she did.
Right. Yeah, she took the shielding off of the nuclear reactors on the hovercraft to build a reflector to get a better signal. So the party got a direction that they could go in. There's baobab signal stuff in that direction. Don't know how far, but that's the way to go. So they hopped in the nuclear powered hovercraft and they headed off. I had an encounter planned It was not going to be a hugely significant encounter, but there was going to be like some native wildlife was going to pose a combat challenge. And then they would fight the native wildlife, and after they killed it, they would be able to get some clues about things from the corpses, not major clues. It wasn't a really significant thing.
Oh, we missed clues.
A little bit. It's okay. You figured things out with subsequent stuff. But instead, they're driving along in a nuclear-powered hovercraft, and then there's a slight bump, and you're sort of like, what was that? I don't know, carrying on. Because it was just like some animals, you know? What are they going to do against the hellcraft that's spewing radiation everywhere and flying at 100 kilometers an hour over the sand? Made
This
out
is
of
the
hard-
most. This is the most Albertan adventure I've ever heard.
So yeah, there was this cactus and a bunch of giant ants or whatever, and they just basically drove past it. There was nothing. So I was like, all right, whatever.
Hey.
I have the cards right here. Never gonna see them. That's fine. That's fine.
Just around the next corner, we just get off like, oh, there's another one of those cactus things.
Yeah.
It's like we avoid it. We get back to the base. One of those cactus things stowed away. It's on the tarmac now.
It's inside the hovercraft. No, it wasn't super significant, and I figured, hey, they've done something creative. They've bypassed the combat. That's fine. So yeah, they as they traveled, the planet they're on is being heavily bombarded from space. So there are some like oases in the desert, areas that have some vegetation, but they're all charred and burnt and stuff. So they come across a place that has the remnants of some kind of settlement or structure. It's a sort of a wrecked dome.
Is it a Thunderdome?
It is not a Thunderdome, no. There's this wrecked dome that looks like it was basically built, the trees grew into the support beams and stuff like that. So it was a very organic thing. But it had been bombarded and destroyed and wrecked and stuff. So they did a little poking around, investigating it. And a bit beyond this, they found the remnants of combat that had resulted in this devastation. They found a battlefield with a whole lot of corpses lying around. And I described the corpses of a mixture of these big, burly, strong, like gorilla lion hybrid creatures that were wearing armor that was like organic armor that looked like it was made out of wood, but it was high-tech wood or something. And there were also aliens there that were more conventional, like humanoid aliens with sleek black armor, and a lot of them had been basically ripped limb from limb. They were killed up, brutally. And so they're investigating the carnage. And I can't remember, did you guys poke around in? No, yeah, that's right. The first thing you did was find the survivor. There was a survivor of the suppression pact soldiers, the guys clad in black armor. And he basically delivered one of these dying lines cutscenes where he says a thing and then dies. And then Yoon was like, I'm going to draw some cards and try to save him. I'm like, oh crap, I forgot players can do that. But fortunately, I think they kind of talked.
Yeah.
I think they kind of talked themselves out of it. They didn't seem totally gung ho.
I mean, we wanted to save them, but it seemed like a cutscene that we couldn't save them, and we're like, as players, we didn't really care that much. So
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. As long as players, you didn't care that much. I actually afterwards I was reviewing. I'm doing this call will be recorded for quality assurance purposes. I was reviewing how things went, and I was like, I hope I didn't like try and prevent them from doing a thing they wanted to try and do. I mean, maybe they wouldn't succeed, but also,
Actually, didn't you say that we could make it? Oh yeah, you said you'd need, because you can get their success
Yeah.
plus and success plus. But to get and so that's like the best, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like, and you're like, you need the 3 pluses.
mhm.
But the thing is, we couldn't, because to get 3 pluses, you need to have some kind of advantage, because you need to draw at least 2 cards. So it was like theoretically possible, but it wasn't actually possible for us, which was, I think, a reasonable,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
it was reasonable because, a theoretical party could have saved this guy, just not us.
Right.
So,
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. But yeah, this was the image I made up of the dying soldier. And I can't remember who it was, but someone was asking, like, what does he look like with his helmet off? And I was like, I forgot to render an image with his helmet off. And they're like, oh, these guys must be evil then.
there's nothing
They're
there.
wearing black
course,
armor and
yes.
helmets, and they, it's like, oh shoot. So I hurriedly after the session, I made an image, and I'm like, oh geez, he looks kind of noble. Crap, I should have let him try and save him more.
Well, the thing I thought was most notable is how Brian specifically made sure that he didn't have a nose so that his helmet wouldn't fit us, so we couldn't use it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. See, no,
which
no.
I guess we haven't talked about. Well, he mentioned it was like an anti-mind snake helmet or whatever. That's the point of it. So
Yeah. These guys they've kitted up to be protected against mind snakes.
That's sensible.
yeah, they have special anti-mind snake helmets. We have a box of tampons.
Incorrectly sized, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that was just an error in the image. I think the
Yeah.
tampons we have are real.
Yeah. No, I just made Stable Diffusion churn out like 10 images of a box full of tampons, and that was the closest thing it got to reality, and it was pretty far from reality. It doesn't do tampons well. People are always like, oh, you can tell AI art if the hands are not right. Well, look at the tampons. That's the real tell.
No,
So
sorry.
anyway, yeah. So his dying speech was just I had it here. Let's see. Basically, he complained about how the parasite plants have these savage animals that they've mind controlled to attack intruders without regard to their own life. They're genetically engineered as warriors. Don't listen to them. And then he dies. And all the players are like, oh, and they say don't listen. They must be the bad guys, because only the bad guys would tell you not to listen.
I mean, my approach was not so much that they're automatically the bad guys, but it's definitely suspicious because, if you're saying don't listen to my opponents, it means that your position is weak. Now, in a fantasy or sci-fi setting, you have to account for things like mind control. So there might be a legit reason. Like, let's say your opponents literally can cause you to be brainwashed just by hearing their arguments by magic. Then there's a legit reason. Don't listen to them.
Yes.
But still, it's still suspicious, right? When you say don't listen to my opponents, it's a suggestion that your position is weak.
Yeah. Well, that's the player's interpretation of things. I, of course, as the humble DM, have no idea what's going on.
That's my thinking, and also my Hawking was very clear to point that out and point out that was very much the logical approach, and that's what we should be taking.
Yeah.
So.
So they did some more poking around in the battlefield. They wanted to investigate the gorilla ions, that's what I call it, gorilla ions. Chumley started going around cracking skulls open.
Well, he wanted to investigate whether they were really mind controlled, and we talked about that. But I think what actually happened was he was like, "Okay, I'm going to bust open their skulls to check it," and Yuna's like, we can just scan for that, right? And he's like in the middle of busting open his skull, like, "Oh yeah, okay." Never thought of that.
So you didn't actually bust open a bunch of skulls.
I think he didn't actually bust open a bunch of skulls. He was just about to. But
all right. But they found one particular gorilla who was bigger than the other ones. His corpse, he was lying on his belly, and he had plants growing out of the back of his skull. And so they did some investigation. The plant was already kind of wilting in the desert sun. It wasn't doing well. But they found that basically this thing was growing out of his brain. And his brain was just like enmeshed in a tangle of roots. So
Yeah, I think we did bust open this guy's head. I think he was the
Yeah.
first one, and because we actually literally saw that, I think.
well, after I described this, the first thing I remember is Flint Daniels, or rather Tim, saying, "I give it a nightmare."
Yeah, I think we scanned it a little bit first,
Yeah.
but we can talk about the nightmare first.
Yeah.
Because we learned something, but
Yeah,
but that
so-
is pretty much what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, so he hooked the nightmare machine up and gave the plants a nightmare. And I tried my best to describe how a plant would squeal in pain and die. It didn't really do that like physically, but yeah, it reacted poorly to being hooked up to the nightmare machine. So yeah. So yeah, the players, I think they were also, they went and they scanned a bunch of the other corpses, and all of the Gorillons they scanned had these roots in their brains. They just weren't as developed as this guy's, and some of them had kind of sort of tried to sprout after death, but this is the only one that had been developed enough that it had emerged.
Yeah, and we were like kind of investigating this, and it's a little bit weird because these plants, they're clearly like literally plants, whereas the baobabs were actually like a silicon kind of thing. Like they weren't exactly plants.
Yeah.
But we did some like scanning of it, and one thing we had found was that the baobabs were kind of almost like cyborgs, like they were like a symbiotic kind of thingy. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it.
They were like a synthetic version of a living thing.
Yeah,
So-
like they were made of silicon and they were synthetic, but they still had the same kind of structures as a living thing would have, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. They would look, and anyway, we found out that these plants have those same structures. It's just that they're like carbon based, they're organic.
Yeah.
So it's like the baobabs are like an android version of these plants.
Yes,
Oh,
that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah.
Which was interesting, but we also were, I mean, that's interesting, but we don't know what to do with it yet.
Yeah.
Clearly they're related, but
It might be important later. But yeah, so the party got back on the hovercraft after they had finished, investigating the whole place. There weren't any other survivors or anything like that. And carried on following the signal that they had been following before. They're getting closer. They're approaching some kind of baobab-like signal or structure or something like that. But they enter a rockier area and end up following a dry stream bed through a gully. And a bunch of a gorilla sort of emerges from one of the caves in the gullies and roars an attack, attack, roar, like that. And they asked, what does the universal translator translate this roar as? And I'm like, well, it's like Klingon, the universal translator works until one of them yells something in Klingon, and then for some reason it suddenly doesn't work for that one yell.
Right.
But yeah, a whole bunch of gorillons jump out in ambush to attack the party, and that was about where we ran out of time. So I figured let's make that the cliffhanger.
that reminds me of the discussion about, so we all have to be wearing those radiation suits because we're on the hovercraft. And I'm also, I guess we're like poisoning the planet, so we probably should stop. But
Yeah, that encounter you had at the beginning, they're dead now.
yeah. But someone was like, I was like, yeah, it's a desert. Those radiation suits are gonna be super hot. And someone's like, no, they won't. They'll be shade. I was like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how it works.
There'll be shade.
Yeah. sunlight is radiation, right? It'll keep them out.
Yeah, it's exactly how that works.
That's like Brian logic. Don't you try pulling that on me. It's not going to work.
Personal log of Flint Daniels, Space Ranger. Across the wastes of this desert planet of war, our noble team embarks on our nuclear-powered hovercraft. Does the suppression force actually seek to end the grim threat to the galaxy from these giant baobabs? Or is there more to this? Never fear, the Space Rangers shall discover the truth and bring peace to this troubled world.
I don't mean to complain because, I'm a professional, but I'm getting real tired of mind snakes and things trying to, break our brains and deserts and, we're always in these bad lands. For once, I'd like to go through some good lands.
Flex Officer's Log. It is unclear whether we should trust our new allies, whether these plants, though related to the baobabs, are truly our enemies. But I believe that by the application of logic, we will ultimately determine what is correct.
Security Officer's Log, Lieutenant Chumley. That daft woman is sure queasy for a doctor.
Medical Officer's Log. Chumley has reached a new low. I understand dissection for science, but there's a difference between dissection and cracking open skulls to see what's inside. We have scanners.